So this is Karen White of Divine Time Astrology, and today we're going to be talking about the full moon in Aries for each of the 12 signs. And I have a guest with me here today. His name is Neeshee Pandit. And did I say your name right?
You did.
Okay, good. And he is an astrologer also, and he's also an Ayurveda practitioner, and he's studying Tibetan medicine. And what else? Tell me a little bit more for the people watching. Just tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, that's a decent summary of what I do these days. Okay. I'm also very much involved in my spiritual practice in relationship to my guru, AtmaAstrology. I've spent a lot of years in the ashram prior to this moment, and I'm also engaged in a lot of research relative to astrology and medicine and different traditions of medicine, including Ayurveda and Tibetan medicine and cross-cultural exchanges. I'm also studying homeopathy.
Yeah, homeopathy with Ernst.
Yeah, I like to just learn all the different things that I can in terms of health and healing and astrology and integrate them and find universal truths within them. And I enjoy writing about that and sharing that knowledge with people.
So today what we're doing is something a little different for the forecasts. Because of Neeshee's knowledge, I thought it would be fun to incorporate some of that when it seems applicable. And Neeshee's going to start, first of all, by talking about the moon itself. And the moon is going to be full in the sign of Aries, September 25th.
25th.
Yeah. So it's waxing now. It's getting brighter and brighter. And the full moon is the moon that gives. And there are certain houses in the chart where it's especially powerful, and we'll be talking about that. It's the new moon that is about letting go of something, but the full moon gives. So Neeshee, if you would start off by telling us just some general things about the moon in light of your knowledge.
Well, Karen, there's a few things that I find really interesting when we're considering the moon astrologically, because from the medical perspective of the Indian and the Tibetan traditions, all of medicine is rooted in astrology. So when they're thinking about medicine, thinking about physiology, they're equally considering cosmology. They're equally considering astrology. So what does the moon represent then for the human being? It represents the flow of life energy and the changes of that life energy, which is why the word flow is so important, because the moon is a phasing process, right? Sometimes it's full, sometimes it's new. In between, it's waxing and waning and so forth. At times it's eclipsed. So if you look at the text where they describe a lot of the calculations for planets and so forth, there's a lot of attention actually on eclipses. So the moon is this really important object of study. And the reason being because people observe that the moon affects the flow of energy in the human body very directly. And we, of course, see it on a larger scale. The tides of the ocean, for example, are hugely affected by the moon's gravitational pull. But that gravity is also affecting us and at the level of energy, which is flowing in our bodies. So the Tibetans in particular, I find, have really systematized this better than anyone else, which they describe the flow of life energy through points in the body from the head to the toe and back around in a 30-day cycle, more or less. And that depends on from the full moon to the new moon.
Right.
And their whole point is that by looking at the astrology of any moment, you can see where the life energy is currently concentrated in the body. And the reason they were looking at that is actually quite practical. When they're performing surgery or acupuncture or any external therapy on vital points, or what we call acupuncture points, they don't want to puncture points that currently contain the concentration of life energy in that moment.
Oh, interesting.
So, exactly. So a Tibetan physician has to be very knowledgeable.
Is that similar to with the advice to not get surgery during a full moon?
Well, you could certainly say that. You could certainly say that. You would have to, of course, look at it very specifically to say one way or the other. But I think, in general, the way that the Tibetan texts describe it, and I'm sure this is also found in the Vedic texts, but we see it really systematized by the Tibetans because they use it to this day. There's a chart that physicians have to be able to refer to at any moment before they perform an external therapy, such as bloodletting, acupuncture, moxibustion.
Yeah.
So the full moon represents the concentration of life energy at the crown of the head.
Oh.
That's why if you think about it, people tend to go a little bit crazy, or we just feel really stimulated in our minds and psych during the full moon.
Right.
During the new moon, the energy is concentrated in the soles of the feet.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So the lunar cycle is showing the flow of life energy from top to bottom and bottom to top in the human body.
That's amazing. That's really interesting. You know, one of the forms of astrology I practice is traditional Western horary, and I use it for medical diagnosis as well. Not, you know, I have to put a disclaimer here. Not real serious illnesses. I always refer people to, you know, regular doctors, but nevertheless, it can show things that can't be seen like in modern medical diagnoses techniques. And it's based on the elements, just like Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and the Tibetan medicine. And from this tradition, they actually used to say that you couldn't be a good doctor unless you were an astrologer. Because they used the astrology to diagnose, to create the medicine, to administer the medicine, and, you know, using the forces of nature, which is very interesting. Of course, the moon is very important too in horary medical charts. Represents, depends on what's going on in the chart, but often it's a timer. It's used as a timer too. Exactly.
Timing is a big part of the observation of the moon, for sure.
Yeah. So that's so interesting. And I'm just happy to hear that there's somewhere in the world where they're still using that system.
That's right.
So that just tells me that those doctors are the kind of doctors I'd want to go to if I had a serious illness, because they wouldn't just do, you know, modern medicine. They would also incorporate all the wisdom from the past too. Okay, so the full moon in Aries, do you have anything to say about it being in Aries in particular?
Well, I think it's interesting to consider the full moon in Aries in light of the fact that the full moon generally is considered to be a time when the energy is concentrated in the head. Right. Now, literally in the yogic system, we're referring to the head in terms of the crown, so the Sahasrara, the crown chakra. That's what's being referred to. But the crown chakra has all the connotations of the head in general as well, if we're going to take it to the physical level and so forth. So Aries has the same connotation as the beginning of the zodiac. It's kind of, it is the Sahasrara. It is the head altogether.
Right. So that makes it more powerful.
I would say it's more powerful. I would say it's a time when there's a lot of energy in the mind.
Yes, a lot of energy in the mind. So how about we start with the signs then and talk about what it means for each one of the signs. And again, the full moon is going to be next Tuesday, September 25th. And I'm basing this on the United Kingdom Greenwich. That's where I have placed it.
Okay.
So that it, you know, it's easier for people around the world to figure it out where it is for them. So starting with Aries, would you like to start off?
Starting with Aries. In terms
Aries Ascendant, we should probably make that clear.
Yeah, Aries Ascendant.
Aries Ascendant, the rising sign. If you don't know what your rising sign is, just find out what your birth time is. And on my website, I have a free chart calculator. So you can see, you put in your birth data, and you'll get a chart, and it'll show you what the first house is, which is the rising sign. Also, you can look at it from the moon, if you know your moon sign. And then the sun sign too, though I don't think it's quite as effective from the sun, but I have noticed that there is some value to it. So, sorry for that interruption. Go ahead, Neeshee.
So with Aries ascendants, the full moon will be in the first house. So that alone gives it quite a bit of significance for them. Anything in our first house is quite immediate to us in our path and our bodies. So I see the full moon in Aries for Aries ascendants being an obvious significant full moon. It's also getting aspected by Jupiter, getting aspected by Saturn.
Oh yeah, it's got quite a lot of aspects. So this is the chart here, and we're using the manifesting planets of Jupiter, Mercury, and then the planet that rules the house that we're talking about. So this is a Jaimini technique, and Jupiter, Mercury, and the house lord are all manifesting planets. So we're going to be using Jaimini aspects. So, and with that, what Neeshee is saying here is that Mars, because Mars rules Aries, is also aspecting Aries. So the Lord of Aries is aspecting that house. Plus we've got Jupiter here aspecting too. And I'll just tell you briefly how this works. The fixed signs of Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus aspect only the movable or cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And we don't have any planets in dual signs today, well, for next Tuesday. So we won't be using those. So as you see here, Aquarius, Mars in Aquarius is in a fixed sign, and it's aspecting the movable or cardinal sign of Aries. So this means that Aries Ascendant has two activating forces upon it, as well as the full moon there. And when you have the full moon in the first house, this is a really good time for you to give yourself something perhaps you've been wanting for a while, but you haven't gotten it either because you're busy or because you're putting money towards other things. But this is a good time for you to do something pleasurable and enjoyable. That's for your body, because Aries is the ascendant lord for Aries rising. So that is the planet that is connected to your body in particular. So in other words, if you are near an Ayurveda practitioner, it would be a great time to do something about it. Which reminds me, Neeshee, do you do, are you able to do Skype consultations as an Ayurveda practitioner? Is that something that's possible?
It's mostly what I do these days.
Okay.
Skype. I mean, I don't have the tools of pulse diagnosis in that context, but with the chart, I feel like it's not really needed.
Yeah, and that's why I think Chinese medical practitioners, like acupuncturists, Ayurveda, because they don't use the chart so much anymore. So they have to use pulse diagnosis. But with the chart, you can see everything.
You can see everything.
Okay, so if you were looking at this chart for an Aries rising person, and you were looking at it from the health point of view, and just with the transits, where the planets are right now, I know you can't look at the main birth chart, but just looking at the transits alone, what pops into your mind? Is there anything that you can tell Aries rising people that could help them to get the most out of this full moon?
Well, the way I'm seeing this, the energies of this full moon for an Aries person is that there's a lot of energy building here for them to really manifest a part of themselves that they've been waiting to manifest or wanting to manifest. This is the moment where it's catalyzing. So Aries being a fire sign, Mars being a fiery planet, ruling it, aspecting it. You have Jupiter there, giving it more force. So
Also
I think
ruled by Mars, by the way, right?
That's
also
right.
Mars. Sorry. So go ahead.
So I just think there's a lot of you know, in Ayurveda, we're talking about the mind, and, you know, Pitta is often associated with the mind, and Pitta is a fiery dosha, a fiery quality. So there's an aspect of mind that is about fire element. That's about, which is why, you know, it's interesting. Aries is the head. We don't usually think of a Mars-ruled sign as having anything to do with intellect, as much as we tend to think of Mercury. But I found a lot of Aries people are actually quite intellectual. Some of my most intellectual friends are Aries people. And they just have this flood of energy coming into them, right? That they're manifesting, that they're conducting and putting into their life. And this full moon in Aries for them is going to be just a big moment for that, I feel. And the more they can actually manifest it, the better. If they don't manifest it, don't put it out, it's going to get frustrating. That fire is going to back up. It's going to feel like really too hot, really too intense, more intensity in the mind rather than, you know, the penetrating insight of the fire element, cutting through things. So they need to flow with it as much as they can.
So something physical might be helpful too. Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you take into consideration the nodes for something like this? Because Rahu in Leo is aspect.
In terms of a Rashi aspect, I would, yeah.
Okay. So Rahu is air energy, and Ketu is more fiery energy.
That's right.
So lots of fire.
Lots of fire, and the air is just going to fan the flames.
Right. So what kind of dietary suggestions would you make for them, just, you know, for that day to help keep it from going out of control?
Well, you know, it's traditional actually to fast during new moons, full moons, during eclipses. All these lunar events are often associated with fasting, and I think that's for the reason that the moon represents nourishment, the reception of nourishment, and the moon cycles affect our energy flow so dramatically that it's during these moments that we can just receive the nourishment of energy itself without the burdens of food, without the burdens of grosser forms of that nourishment.
Does fasting heat the body more?
It certainly can for certain types of people. But, you know, we have to define fasting also. Fasting is not necessarily complete abstinence from food. It can be monodieting. It can be a simplification of the diet. It can be having one less meal. It can be simply be having 3 meals that are lighter, like just eating fruits. So there's quite a range of dietary understanding of fasting. People should just be attentive to their diet and try to lighten the diet, I feel, and allow the energy to move.
That's really interesting. With the moon himself, he's watery. He's kapha, right?
That's right. Kapha and vata. The moon is both doshas.
Okay. So, yeah, so it won't get too crazy out of hand, the heat.
No, it won't, especially if the person is able to really flow with this energy. Because it's the obstruction to that energy that's going to make it hard to use this moon and create imbalances. Whenever energy is moving, you don't have imbalance anymore.
Oh, that makes sense. Right.
So it's really important.
So capture your ideas, because this would be, you could probably get downloads that are really significant for your life during this transit. Okay, so why don't we move on then to Taurus rising.
Okay.
In Taurus, the moon is in the 12th. And that could have something to do with perhaps an expense, but it doesn't have to be a negative thing. So for you, that's the 3rd house. So it could be an expense that you incur for learning a new skill. That's always useful, especially because you might be getting downloads, right, from the divine about some skills that you could learn that would be very helpful to you. Or maybe an expense on the part of for a sibling, like maybe you go out and do something together, or you help a sibling to pay for education to learn a new skill. And what would you say too about it being in the 12th, considering that's a very spiritual house? It's one of the meanings of the 12th.
Yeah, to me it seems like an auspicious time for Taurus people to meditate.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's just what's coming to me, given that just looking at the Jupiter aspect, the 12th house connotations, their lord, their Lagna lord is also aspecting.
Yes, here it is, Venus aspecting. Right, and Mars, Venus and Mars. Oh,
Venus
this
and
is
Mars.
also the house of bed pleasures.
That's right.
So in other words, if you decide to just hang out in bed with your partner all night, that is also a great use of your time. So it would be comfortable. It's the full moon is something that gives. Yeah, those are the possibilities. And let me see, Rahu aspecting it, so that would be the 4th house for Taurus. And they're aspecting each other. What would you say about that? Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Go a lot of ways.
Well, it could mean too that you are not really able to sit down and relax very much.
Right.
And in that case, you may want to do something a bit more active, or at least maybe something a lot more spiritually focused to help you with this Rahu in the 4th house, because you've had it there for a while now, and it's going to be there for a while longer. So this is the house of your inner emotional happiness, which of course the moon is a big part of. So
yeah, I'm also thinking about rejuvenation. I think this could potentially be a rejuvenating placement for Taurus people, but they're going to have to participate in that. So yoga, of course, in whatever form people decide to do it, is a form of movement that's combined with energy sensitivity. And that would be a rejuvenating exercise to engage in during this time.
That's a good idea. And Rahu refers to, isn't Rahu associated with the Kundalini energy?
Yes, Rahu and Ketu both being serpent power.
Wow. So this could be a really great time to be doing yoga.
Yeah, and in terms of meditation, it could be a type of meditation that's more energetically involved, such as pranayama.
Ah, fascinating. Well, for Taurus, 3, 4, 5, 6, Mercury, the other manifesting planet, is in the 6th. So this is a house of overcoming obstacles and working with your health issues. And Rahu here is ruled by the sun, and the sun is aspecting the 4th house too. So this seems to me also would be a good time for getting more insight into your elemental balance or imbalance in your body, because Rahu in one of the angular houses can really increase the creative energy, but also the chaotic energy.
Mm-hmm. So anytime there's a lot of energy, as with any full moon in any sign, there's a lot of energy that needs to be harnessed. So that's a theme with the full moon, I would say in general. Yeah. It needs to be harnessed in order for it to be healthy for the person. All energy that's flowing but not harnessed or used properly ends up becoming a form of suppression or a blocked flow, which becomes an imbalance, which becomes a health problem later on. So also, I want to point out the debilitated sun and the fact that having the sun and its sign of debilitation during this full moon, of course, just brings to light the lunar energy all the more.
Yes, and it's in the 6th for Taurus rising, so, or Taurus moon. So that's interesting. That could, well, because the sun is ruling the 4th house of the inner emotional life, it's also related to your home, like where you live.
Right.
So one of the things you can do with that excess energy is actually really clean your house, get rid of stuff, and arrange it in ways that are a lot more comfortable and truly rejuvenating. Because that's a lot of energy right there. You could like rearrange your whole house. Not that it's a good idea to do the whole house, but like maybe a room, the bedroom at least, because that's a Venus room, a rejuvenating room. Anything you want to say about that?
No, I think the fact that the sun is debilitated and the moon is full just indicates that the moon is at this time the source of nourishment and vitality. And so it's really all the more crucial to harness its energy at this full moon juncture.
Right. Through like yoga and meditation would be really good.
That's right.
Okay. So that's for Taurus. Now for Gemini rising. How about you start with that one, Neeshee?
Okay, Gemini rising. So the moon will be in their 11th house. That's nice. Full moon in the 11th. Still getting all the same aspects as before. In this case, Mercury is the Lagna Lord aspecting. And of course, we still have Mars, which is a ruler of this moon, aspecting.
Right. And Jupiter.
So it's interesting how this moon is aspected by pretty much everything.
I know. It has quite a lot going on with it. So 11th house is income from your career.
A lot of gains through this full moon for a Gemini rising.
Yes, some gains. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Because remember, the full moon gives.
Is my video stuck?
It looks like it is. Yeah, you look like you're frozen.
I'm back now.
There you're back. Good. And the 11th house is a growing house. So you can think about how you're getting your needs met or not getting your needs met when it comes to the compensation you're getting for the creative work you're doing in the world, whether it's through a job or a business or at home, however you're doing your work. And you could come up with some ideas because Jupiter here, the natural ruler of wealth, is aspecting and influencing and helping to manifest. You may be able to come up with some ideas for more long-term sources of income or short-term, because the moon's in a short-term sign. Like there might be something you can do that requires you to put out a lot of energy over a short period of time, but that can still bring you pretty good rewards. So that's like the mundane, boring, everyday interpretation of that. So what would you have to say about it from an Ayurveda or just the medical astrology point of view?
Gemini is an air sign. The more Vata aspects of the moon apply to them more, which is the more of the flowing aspects, more of the lighter aspects of it. Whereas for a Taurus person, it's a little bit heavier. You know, they feel the nourishment of that moon. They feel that Kapha energy more coming from the moon, just because their nature is more along those lines.
Right.
So I would say for a Gemini person, this is a stimulating moon for sure.
Yeah.
And they should be attentive to that which they've been working towards and know that they're going to gain through, because that's going to be a flowing energy right now. So they need to really tune into that and go and get what they know they can get.
Right. And it might also include creativity because Mercury, the ascendant lord for Gemini rising, is in the 5th. And it's aspected by Rahu, which is the planet of innovation, the future, technology. It's aspected by Mars, which is, you know, usually mechanical things. So if you have any ideas for technology, for another app, now would be a good time to write these things down and do some research on how you can make it happen. Make it really happen for you. And it'll be something that will pay off for you long term because the full moon is in the 11th.
I would say a key word for this full moon for Gemini people is connection. because Gemini is a sign that's it's about connection, and this full moon, I feel for them, is also about connection. The moon is about connection through receptivity, through openness, through availability, through flow. So I would say for the Gemini person, they should be really attentive to the means by which they can gain through connection with something, whether that's themselves or something external to them, either way.
Right. You know, and the moon is ruling the second house
Mm-hmm.
for Gemini.
Ruling the second and in the 11th.
And in the 11th, yeah. Energy.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy here. And so
Yeah.
they obviously need to, A, really tune into that, and B, not let it go into excess. So making sure that they stay grounded, that they stay on a good routine.
Right.
During this full moon, you know, this wouldn't be a time to like really push yourself and do odd things or work odd hours or go to bed really late and things of that nature. This is a time to really just kind of stay more disciplined and in the flow of the natural cycle of the day.
Right.
That's going to help keep the energies in check.
And add a little healthy fat to your meals.
Exactly. Healthy fat, for sure.
Okay, so that's Gemini. So now the sign of Cancer, which the moon rules. So for Cancer, the full moon is in the 10th. And this means that something from your job will be satisfying, will be giving to you. Perhaps when you reflect on the work that you've done so far this year, which I think is always a good idea for people to do because they tend to forget all of their wins throughout the year. You know, they're always usually climbing some mountain that they haven't gotten to the top of yet and forgetting all the other things that they've accomplished. And that can be a great source of satisfaction for Cancer rising, to think about those things. And it looks like something new could be coming into your job too, something exciting, something creative, something you've been working towards. So what do you want to say, Neeshee?
Well, it's important. All the full moons are important for a Cancer person because they're ruled by the moon. Right. So I would say in a sense they're more affected than anybody else by the lunar phases. Mm-hmm. So full moon, of course, super important for them in the 10th house. That's a prominent house placement for the full moon to fall. Definitely a part of their expression in the world is being energized by this full moon, is coming to light by the full moon. So they should be conscious of that and move in that direction.
Yeah, because it's in Aries, write down the ideas that you get. Because it's on a Tuesday that this is happening, so chances are good if you have a job, you're going to be at work. So write down all of your ideas because you'll be getting some good ones.
And that stands out. The fiery aspect of this moon stands out for a Cancer person who are more watery by nature and by element. So this is a nice moon because it's going to bring in more of an initiating and transformative and purifying energy with the moon, rather than it being a watery moon in a Kapha sign that weighs them down more, or that just makes them feel more sedentary or hermit-like. This is going to be very much a catalyzing moon that they're going to feel more energy from it. Yeah,
so you might be unusually outgoing that day. So Leo is next. So you can start that one.
Okay, for Leo rising, full moon in Aries falls in the 9th house.
Yes.
So that's an interesting placement. So the 9th house is about a person's philosophy in life, their dharma. So this full moon might be more reflective for the Leo person. It might be something in which they are turned in a more introspective direction, as opposed to what we were just talking about for Cancer people. I would see this as being a more introspective full moon. And it's, of course, in a fire sign, and Leo is also a fire sign. So this is an agreeable element, very much in line with their own nature. It can also be an insightful moon. I think it's insightful for everybody simply because of its placement in Aries. But for the Leo person, it's going to be insightful relative to the ways in which they want to live and the ways in which they're living out their path in life. And it might be more philosophical for them.
Right. And it's also the house of dreams. So like, pay attention to your dreams. So before you go to sleep, if there's something that you really want to know, ask yourself your question that you have. And then the next morning, pay attention, try to remember your dream. If you can, write it down, because in the act of writing down your dream, you end up remembering a lot more of it. It could be a message for you. Also, the intuition can be much more keen with the full moon there in the 9th house. And if you're married, Leo rising, if you're married, it's also the house of marriage. So it can bring something pleasant to your marriage and perhaps how you're thinking about your marriage. And then, of course, it's the house of higher knowledge, too. So it would be a great time to embark on a path of study, something that you're really interested in, that you've been interested in but haven't found the time to start. Be a really good time to start that. And like Neeshee was saying, it's related to philosophy, spirituality, astrology, for that matter. Now, astrology is also the 8th house of the occult sciences, but the 9th house is involved too. So yeah, that's a nice one for Leo. So do you have anything to say about Rahu being right there in the ascendant for Leo?
I do, and I want to continue to go in this direction of what I was saying and then what you said, which is that there's a subconscious activation through this placement for the Leo people. And that has to do with the fact that Rahu is on their ascendant and is aspecting the moon. So Rahu alone is going to give that subconscious activation. But now that it's joined with, it's aspecting the moon, it's just amplified. So like you were saying, paying attention to dreams, but this is going to be one of those more classic full moons where it brings up stuff in people.
Okay. So stuff from the shadow side, you mean? Like
exactly. The unconscious coming to the surface.
Okay, which is the point of life, right?
That is the point of life.
Conscious. That's how you become a whole person. So even if the stuff is scary, if you write it down, it's a way of capturing it and keeping it from, you know, wreaking any havoc in your life. Just put it down on paper where you can look at it over time. So yeah, if it does bring up. Also, Rahu in the 1st house too is self-development. Your body, you know, your persona, your basic self. So it's okay for you to be a bit, quote unquote, selfish right now and focus on your body, yourself, your own understanding of yourself. Because Rahu will help you with that for sure, especially if you pay attention to the unconscious stuff, which comes through in dreams and slips of the tongue and experiences that show you to yourself. So yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Good time to study, you know, study any forms of higher knowledge, whether that's astrology or spiritual texts or teachings. This is a good time, or psychology, whatever it is the person might feel drawn to that represents a higher form of knowledge. This would be a time to just introspect and study and connect with that more.
Absolutely. Okay, so now Virgo. So for Virgo, it's in the 8th house.
Right, house of the occult.
Yeah, the occult hidden sciences, which is what you are listening to right now. Astrology is one of those, where you can see the order behind the order. Now, the 8th house also is your partner's resources. It has a lot to do with your physical vitality as well, but it gives you incredible intuition. right now, because it is in the house of hidden things, hidden knowledge. And it's aspected by its Lord and by Jupiter and Rahu, as we were saying before. So you could get some really powerful insights right now, very powerful insights. And if you're in a relationship, you have a partner, your partner may be able to add to the resources of the partnership in a significant way, whether it's a tangible thing or an intangible thing. It doesn't matter.
I agree. I think it's a time of insights into hidden things.
So
of course, Virgo being a very discerning sign, it's
right.
especially auspicious. So whatever it is they're involved in terms of study or intellectual endeavor or any of these type of sciences, this will be a very insightful time for them.
Yes, very. And the Ascendant Lord is in the second house.
Right.
So the axis here is a security axis.
You're right, second and eighth.
Yeah, so money, but more than money, because knowledge is valuable too. It's definitely something that in many ways is more valuable than material security. Though, of course, you will be concerned about that. And you'll probably be able to make some strides in that area. You might want to be able to have a conversation with your partner about it. Perhaps you might want to reinvest or change some of your investments over to something else that your intuition tells you it will pay off better for you over time.
When I think about Virgo, I think about the cycle of energy as reception, release, and the fact that Virgo rules the intestines, which is about taking in usable forms of nourishment and releasing unusable forms of nourishment, also known as waste. So that's really the function of Virgo for everybody, but especially the Virgo person. Something about that is epitomized in them. So the full moon being about the flow of energy, I would say that a Virgo person needs to make sure they're really tuned into that cycle of the breath, reception, release, of their digestion, which is mimicking that very cycle of life. So they need to be especially attentive to taking in good things during this full moon and letting go of everything that is not useful to them, not usable to them, and kind of break through with that. So this might be a time when that discernment becomes especially obvious. That discrimination becomes profound.